This is the story of a shepherd named George Hardy and the sheep on his farm. George lives in a caravan right there on the farm. He has given every single one of his sheep a name. The most special among them is Sebastian, the biggest ram of the lot, who sometimes wanders off, and sometimes comes right back. Then there's Lily, the smartest sheep here. George is writing all of this down in a letter. He says he feeds them every day, keeps them entertained, and gives every one of them their medicine. And when evening falls, he reads them detective novels and mystery books. George likes to pretend the sheep follow along with the story, but he figures there's no way they could really understand any of it. The truth is the complete opposite. These sheep understand everything. They talk among themselves about who the killer in the book could be, and every one of them has a different theory, but Lily had already figured out the killer 2 chapters early. She really is the smartest sheep of them all. And the next day, when George finishes the story, she's proven right. There are also 3 energetic lambs here. Most lambs are born in spring, but here there's a winter lamb too. This one has no name. The sheep don't consider it part of their flock, so George takes a little extra care of it. Watching this, the sheep decide George isn't a sheep. He just doesn't understand the winter lamb. George lives near a town called Denbrook. That's where the shepherd Caleb lives. A butcher named Hem lives there. An innkeeper named Beth lives there. And in the church lives a reverend named Hillcoat, a man George has a complicated relationship with. George walks into the middle of the church and drops a thick bundle of cash onto the donation plate. Whoever George is writing this letter to, he wants that person to come here and meet his flock. The next day, the sheep get excited the moment they spot Caleb's truck. They like him. The twin sheep are already plotting to bash his shiny truck, but Lily stops them. They don't bash things without a reason. With Caleb showing up, the sheep think maybe the 2 flocks are about to be combined. But George shoves him right out of the caravan. Something else is going on inside. The sheep start saying this is sad and they need to forget it ever happened. Now any sheep here can forget whatever they choose to. All except Maple, who forgets nothing, so they tell him not to remind them about it. On the count of 3, the sheep forget Caleb's visit entirely. Meanwhile, a journalist arrives in town to cover the local cultural festival. At the post office, Beth spots a letter George wrote, addressed to someone named Rebecca Hampstead. The 2 of them start talking, deciding that a letter written on rose-scented paper has to be a love letter. So, Beth quietly slips it out of the postwoman's bag. Right then, the journalist walks up to Beth. He takes one look at the 3 tiny tables set up for the so-called festival and is instantly disappointed. He says, "This is not a festival." He's a small-time journalist named Elliot Matthew sent by the Gazette. He's been hunting for a real story for a long time, but his features editors shipped him out here. Writing about this place definitely won't land him any promotion. Lily walks up and demands her admission fee from him. She only cares about her business. Elliot leaves. That night, the weather turns to rain and thunder. The lambs are scared of the thunder. So, Sir Richfield tells them that all those clouds were once sheep. And when they see the ground drying out, they begin to dance to make the grass and clover grow. Everyone here believes sheep never die. They just turn into clouds. No one remembers how only Maple knows none of it is true, but he backs the story anyway elsewhere. Hillcoat locks the money away in a safe. Hem sharpens his butchering knives, and Beth, reading George's letter, becomes furious. At that very moment, Elliot's car slams into a tree. He has his car towed from the scene, but as he drives off, he catches a flash of light. Then comes a loud knock at George's door. The next morning, the sheep wake up and head outside, where they find George lying on the ground. Lily thinks it's some kind of game, but Mel checks George's heartbeat and realizes he's dead. Lily insists that dying isn't real, that it only happens in books. She asks if he'll turn into a cloud. Maple tells her no, only sheep do that. Lily rests her head on George's hand. The rest of the flock gets the news, too. Without George, what are they going to do? Lily says they have to forget George. Despite Maple's protests, they all start to forget him on the count of 3. Just then, Sebastian appears and says he would not let them forget his shepherd so easily. They will all remember him because a friend should never be forgotten. George showed him justice once and he deserves it in return. Sebastian tells them George raised them all only for their wool. And the sheep here don't even know why a sheep is raised for anything beyond wool. Right then, a lamb steps forward with a question. Why was George murdered? In the nighttime stories, the dead are always murdered. The question lights a spark in Lily's mind, too. Soon, the police arrive, and Caleb is the one who found the body first. The The butcher hem shows up, too, and starts counting George's sheep. Lily is puzzled. Why would George have walked out into the rain without his hat and raincoat? Then she spots 2 glasses of drinks inside the caravan, which means someone else had been there with him. The reporter, Elliot, arrives as well. He snaps photos of George, but Officer Tim tells him it was a heart attack. Not much of a story for him. Tim had already looked underneath and around the caravan. But after Elliot points it out, he checks inside the caravan, too. Tim has never faced a case like this in his life. It's Elliot who raises the question of why George would walk outside during a heart attack. He's also spotted the 2 glasses of drinks here, but Tim keeps sticking to the heart attack. He says George Hardy was not murdered. Lily, though, says it's a murder. George was visited by someone he knew, someone who offered him a drink. The lack of any visible injury on George points to poison, and the grassy green stain on his land points to a struggle. She says that just like in the nighttime stories, the policeman here is completely hopeless. So, they'll have to solve this murder themselves. Hearing that, Sebastian starts laughing. He says they're sheep. They're not smart enough to solve this. He tells Lily that she may be the smartest sheep in the world, but where in the world has she ever actually been? She's never left this farm, so she should leave this murder case to the humans. But Lily puts everyone to work hunting for clues. She asks if anyone saw someone here. The winter lamb says it saw George's ghost. Because of the dark, it couldn't see clearly, but it smelled like George. Right then, the church bells ring. The bells are ringing for a town gathering. It's about Georgie, so the sheep should go there too. But Sebastian says their hooves have never touched anything but grass. They've never left this place. And that's exactly what happens. The moment Lily and Maple see the road, they freeze in fear. They can't even work up the courage to step onto it. Lily actually lies down. But then she watches a chicken cross the road without a care. So, Lily and Maple press up against each other and cross the road together. Lily was confident about solving the case. The way she saw it, this would all play out just like the nighttime stories. They reached the town. There, Officer Tim says he is not allowed to comment on the poisoning. And the moment they hear that, everyone understands George was murdered. He was poisoned by something called taxine found in the berries of the yew tree, which is right here. Just then a car pulls up and out steps a beautiful young woman. Tim is smitten the second he sees her. But right after George's lawyer Lydia arrives too. And this young woman is George's daughter Rebecca Hampstead. Tim had called the number found at the bottom of George's will to bring Lydia here. But Tim never actually read the will himself. Lydia says she'll do a reading of the will later this afternoon. She just needs to make sure Reverend Hillcoat, Caleb, Beth, Ham, Rebecca, and Tim are all present as they're named in the will. Lydia says Rebecca lives in America and yet she's here in Denbrook on the very day her father died. Meaning she was already in the country the night George was killed. Lydia takes one look at Tim's state and realizes this is his first murder case. The sheep make it to the well reading, too. Inside the room, Tim asks Rebecca whether she could have arrived only today or whether she was already in the country last night when George was murdered. Rebecca says she arrived in the country yesterday at 7 p.m., but she had never come to Denbrook before today. The sheep noticed that there's a smile on Rebecca's face, but fear in her eyes. Rebecca starts to cry, saying she was supposed to meet him today. Meanwhile, Maple Gaze lands on a carrot through another window and he gets himself stuck trying to reach it and eat it inside. Rebecca reveals she also has a twin brother she's never met, but he lives in South Africa. Right then, Lydia comes over and throws Elliot out, telling him he has no business here and to get out. On a drying pillow at the inn, there's a green stain. Lydia has also called George's son, Peter, to join the reading. She explains that George sent her a copy of his will 2 months ago, but today she'll be reading a new one, the one Tim found on his table, dated 3 days before his death. In it, George says he has unfinished business with each of them. Among those now in this very room are a fool, a bad shepherd, a spring lamb, a winter lamb, a victim, and 2 murderers. The moment they hear this, everyone starts arguing about who the murderer is and who the next victim could be. George then leaves his son Peter 300 acres, the land currently leased out to Caleb. For Rebecca, he leaves the adjoining 300 acres, the land that makes up George's farm, and along with it Rebecca gets his caravan, his barn, and his sheep. In the previous will, Hardy had donated his remaining assets to an animal charity. But in this will, he leaves the rest of his assets to Rebecca as well. Those are 3 bags of fertilizer and $30 million. 2 years ago, George created a remedy for a sheep disease known as ORF, and he sold the patent to a large agricultural corporation for $30 million. Right then, MP, freeing himself, knocks down a whole pile of things. Tim steps out to see where the noise came from. With his eyes covered, Maple rams straight into him and bursts into the inn. He smashes into everything, creating total chaos. In the middle of it, Tim spots George's letter in Beth's possession. Maple crashes into a window. They feed him and push him back outside. Here, Caleb says these sheep need a shepherd, especially that big wild ram George brought back from the carnival. After that, Elliot asks Tim if he would like to make a statement, but Tim doesn't want to say anything. So Elliot says, look, he needs a story and Tim needs an arrest so they can work together. Last night, while his car was being towed, he saw a flashlight around 9 p.m. near George's field, and the coroner said the same thing, that George died sometime between 8 and 11. The two of them agreed to work together. The sheep ask Lily why she hasn't solved the mystery yet. She solves them in the nighttime stories right away. Lily says the real world is different from books. Right then, their gaze falls on Rebecca, who's searching for something out there with a flashlight. The winter lamb wanders up to Rebecca. The sheep watch her and notice that she smells like George but doesn't look like him. She must have been born in winter, too, which is why George didn't want her around. The dumb sheep starts calling Rebecca the murderer. Now, the last book George read to them explained how to narrow down a suspect. So, someone has to go into the trailer and bring that book out, so it can be delivered to Police Officer Tim. But the one who goes in for the book is Will Eyes, whose eyes stay covered by wool, leaving him unable to see anything. He bumps into everything inside the trailer before finally reaching the book. They leave the book outside the police station for Tim so he can read it and crack the case. After that, Lily goes to Sebastian and asks what a carnival is. Sebastian tells her it's music and rides. Every day, children would come to pet him and feed him until he grows too big. After that, at night, the men from the carnival would come and lead him into a circle where he had to fight a dog until he bled. But then one night, George found him, he paid them and took him away. Lily asks how he ended up in that terrible place, why he wasn't with his flock. Sebastian tells her he's a winter lamb, too, and sooner or later a winter lamb wants to leave. The next day, Tim watches the sheep standing outside his window. He says every time something interesting happens with this case, there they are. But Elliot thinks he's lost his mind. Then Tim shows off his progress. He's made a chart. With it, he'll figure out which of the 5 suspects had the means, the motive, and the opportunity. Meaning the yew tree, which is all around the church, but the clearest motive, the money, belongs only to Rebecca. Now he has to find out who had all 3 of these things, and that person will be the real killer. Tim learned all of this from reading that book. He starts questioning everyone. Hem thinks the murderer has to be whoever is in George's will because George himself was a vegetarian. So Tim asks Beth about the letter, but Beth says it was the postal services. Mistakes. Then Tim asks Caleb why he went to George's farm that morning. Caleb explains that George had canceled his lease, so he was bringing him a proposal to reconsider. He says Tim has read the will. According to it, he's the bad shepherd. After that, Tim asks Hill about George's donation. Hill explains that George came to him a while ago and told him about the church putting his children up for adoption, but as soon as he got back on his feet, he started searching for them. The church wouldn't tell him where they were due to strict policy. So, Hillcoat asked him for money to hand over that information because the church is in dire need of repair. Hillcoat says Caleb is the bad shepherd, not him. Tim asks Rebecca where she was between 8 and 11 p.m. on the night of the murder. Her answer is that she was at the hotel near the airport watching TV. Then Tim calls Rebecca by her real name, Chastity Cramps. Rebecca had changed her name, running a background check on her. Tim learned that she was once associated with a known criminal and even shared a bank account with him. Rebecca says it was 3 years ago and she didn't know he was a criminal. Tim asks if she's ever been near the yew tree. Rebecca clearly says no. Tim asks what about George's farm. Rebecca denies that too. Meanwhile, Lily is deep in thought. The other sheep tell her to stop thinking so hard. Rebecca did it, but then the winter lamb comes over and says, no, she's good. She smells just like George. Now Lily takes note of what the winter lamb said, that Rebecca smells just like George. And the sheep named Cloud had said the same thing yesterday after spotting Rebecca way out in the field. But how could she have smelled her from that far away unless Rebecca had been here before? And Cloud isn't telling them everything. So Cloud shows them Rebecca's bangle. The one Cloud loved so much because it has no end. She explains that Rebecca was here on the night of the murder, and that when she stroked Cloud's wool, the bangle slipped off. So Lily accepts it too. Rebecca did it. She lied and told the policeman she'd never been here, but she was here yesterday and on the night of the murder as well. Sebastian says they've all hated her from the start just because she happened to be born in winter. Sebastian was certain she didn't do it. He looked into her eyes. Sebastian gets angry and walks off, so Lily goes to Tim. Maple grabs his cap and carries it off. Tim chases after them and runs straight to that bangle out on the farm. He takes it to Rebecca, saying it matches the one on her other wrist, and that he found it in George's meadow, the place she said she'd never been. He had a warrant to search Rebecca's room, and there, beneath a pair of shoes, he finds the berries of the yew tree. Tim arrests Rebecca. Tim takes her to the police station and questions her. Rebecca says she's ready to tell him everything. She admits she was on his property the day of George's murder. George had sent her a letter telling her he'd been searching for her for the past 20 years. He'd also sent her a copy of the will, but this was the will without the money. George wanted Rebecca to come and meet him, so Rebecca came to see him. The two of them talked about the sheep, and he told her how he'd named every one of them, and that he wanted Rebecca there to take care of them. But afterward, Rebecca had been forced to tell all those lies out of desperation, because if she told the truth, she'd be walking right into a trap. But Tim doesn't believe a word of it. The next morning, Rebecca will be taken to the county court and officially charged with murder. After that, Lily comes to Tim and tells him that apparently George picked the wrong lamb. Peter has agreed to sell his sheep and land to Caleb, because now everything of Lily's will become Peter's too. So, they'll handle the paperwork tomorrow. Lily hears all of this. She goes quiet and watches Rebecca. A doubt creeps into Lily's mind too. Then, Meeple points out that Caleb's meadow is on the other side of the fence. Why don't they go over and meet their new flock? But when they go over there, Caleb's sheep appear. Their faces are so dark you can't even see them. They were French sheep. Lily says Caleb will be their new shepherd. Then one sheep steps forward and says run. The barking of Caleb's dogs rings out and Caleb's sheep vanish. So instead of heading out, Lily and Maple wander by mistake deeper inside into Caleb's barn. There are large cardboard boxes labeled Denbrook Meats. Caleb and Ham have started a meat business together. Right then, the dogs show up. Meeple and Lily run for their lives. The dogs chase after them. And just then, Sebastian arrives to save them. He fights the dogs. The dogs flee. But in the fight, Sebastian is badly injured, too. He can't get up. Lily doesn't understand. Meeple says he's dying. And seeing all of this, Lily realizes the story about turning into a cloud is a lie. In his final moments, the dying Sebastian sees George. Then, spotting Caleb approaching, Maple gets Lily out of there. The two of them rouse the others and tell them to come on, follow us. But seeing the road, the rest of the sheep stopped. Lily tells them Sebastian is dead. And if they don't leave tonight, they'll all die too. Caleb turns sheep into food. So, the rest of the sheep say, stop saying awful things. They choose to forget what Lily said. Despite Lily's protests, they forget all of it. They all head back into the meadow. So, Lily asks Meeple, tonight wasn't the first time Elle saw a sheep die, was it? Maple says that yes, he remembers all the bad things, but he remembers good things too, like his mother's face and all his old friends. And she will remember Sebastian. He knows this hurts, but if she forgets, she can't save the others. And it's their memory that keeps the ones we love alive. Lily was just about to go to the caravan and forget everything when she saw George sitting right there in front of her. Lily asks if he's really here. George says, yes, he is, because she didn't forget him. He says Caleb isn't going to do anything to his flock because she's going to save them. If she figures out who really did it, Rebecca will get the flock and they'll all be safe. But Lily wonders how she's supposed to figure that out. And right then, she remembers the grassy green stain on Hardy's hand. And everything becomes clear. Lily now knows who did it. She knows it wasn't a grass stain. Right then, the winter lamb comes to help them too. The one who had never forgotten anything. Lily has it dipped. One leg in yellow paint first, then the other in blue paint. After that, the winter lamb goes to the police station. Rebecca watches all of this. The winter lamb draws some lines. Lily is guiding it. The next morning, Tim comes and sees all of it. Rebecca tells him a lamb did it and the lamb was taking orders from another sheep. So, Tim sees that they'd drawn two lines connected to George. On one side was Rebecca and on the other green in the middle of yellow. But Tim can't make sense of it. And as he wipes it away, his own hand turns green from the yellow and blue mixing together. After that, More police officers arrive to take Rebecca to the county court. Tim hands Rebecca over to them. But right after signing the form, Tim's eyes land on the winter lamb. Its legs were covered in paint. And right there, things become clear to him, too. He stopped Rebecca from leaving. He said she didn't do it. He understood it, too. Who killed George? From the moment Rebecca arrived in Denbrook, she was the prime suspect because she lied about being at George's farm. And this is exactly what the killer was counting on. The real killer is Peter. Just as George sent a copy of his will to Rebecca, he must have sent one to her brother too. And he probably found out about the 30 million. After that, he decided to get his hands on it. But if a murder victim leaves you a fortune in his will, then you become the prime suspect. But if he leaves it to your sister and she goes down for a crime, the money automatically goes to the next of kin. And Peter is the one who, just like Rebecca, has changed his name. He is Elliot Matthews, the one the winter lamb MTO stoke for George's ghost. Elliot has been living in this country for some time now, and George told him that Rebecca was coming to visit. That gave Elliot the perfect opportunity, and he came here in the name of the festival, then made a show of leaving town, but an accident brought him back. And later that night, after Rebecca left, he goes to George and poisons his drink and plants the new will. But George was stronger. A struggle broke out between them. But then George dies. Elliot was the one who stepped out of the will reading to take a phone call. He was the one who slipped into Rebecca's room and planted the berries in her shoes. But Elliot left a clue behind. One that was on George's hand. One mark was blue, one was green. The blue came from the medicine he used to make. And the green came from blue and yellow mixing. There was a green stain on the pillowcase Elliot slept on the night he murdered George. The yellow came from Elliot's hair, which George grabbed during their struggle, and the cheap quick dye rubbed off. Elliot had hastily dyed it on his way here, so he wouldn't look anything like Rebecca and George. Elliot denies all of it. So Tim takes one of his hairs. Elliot says he admits he's not a natural blonde, but that doesn't prove anything. But Tim hadn't taken the hair to check if it was blonde. He took it to check the DNA to confirm that Elliot really was Hardy's son. And then everything would be proven. So Elliot runs. And right then, the two rams who love to bash things show up. Lily tells them to go bash him. They do exactly that and stop Elliot's car. Elliot is arrested. Tim apologized to Rebecca. The winter lamb comes to meet her too. Tim gives Lily a thankful glance as well. After that, they head off, but the winter lamb stays behind. Then Beth gives Rebecca the letter George had written. The one she kept, thinking it was a love letter. Beth loved George. But at Rebecca's mother, George was never able to love anyone. Rebecca says she doesn't even know her name. So Beth tells her her name was Lily. Then Ham and Caleb come and offer to buy Rebecca's sheep and farm. But Rebecca refuses because those two were murderers of sheep. And they didn't even know the names of George's sheep, the names Rebecca knew every single one of. Rebecca decides to change her own name, too, from Rebecca Hampstead to Rebecca Hardy. She buys all of Caleb's sheep and arrives at George's farm. She goes and meets Lily, who was named after her mother. In George's place, Rebecca sits them all down and reads them stories. Then Lily gets up and goes to the winter lamb. She names the winter lamb George. She takes it with her and the rest of the flock accepts it too. And with that, this story comes to its end right here. How did you like this explanation?